Hello there, we're nearing the end of meteorological winter, a taste of spring out there over the last few days, at least in the south and east of the UK. It has been remarkably wet further north and west, but it marks the end of what has been a very wet few months across many parts of the UK. And because it's been so wet, groundwater levels are at their highest for many years. So this graph here is just showing the groundwater levels at a station in West Norfolk, but replicated in many other places. And you can see on the graph here, you have to go all the way back to early 2013 to find a year with a higher level of groundwater. And before that, you have to go back to 2003. So the highest groundwater levels we've seen for many years in parts of East Anglia, at least, just because it's been so wet over the last few months, December, January, and into parts of February as well. And not just here, we've seen more heavy rain elsewhere over the last week or so. This map here showing the 48-hour accumulation of rainfall between Friday and Saturday at the end of last week. And you can see a lot of these western hills here seeing an awful lot of rain because we've had a very moist south or southwesterly wind that piles up the rain on these southern slopes. So Dartmoor here, for example, South Wales, Cumbria, and into parts of Scotland as well, seeing an awful lot of rain over the course of 2 days. But head north of the mountains and the hills, so mid-Devon here, just north of Dartmoor, the northern part of Cumbria here, not anywhere near as much rain as we've seen over and to the south of the hills. In fact, some parts of South Wales and Cumbria actually saw over 140 millimetres in less than 48 hours during the course of Friday into Saturday. So an awfully wet spell of weather here. Conversely, hardly anything at all across East Anglia and the southeast. And it's a very, very similar pattern right now actually for the next couple of days or so. And that's because the jet stream is lined up like this, coming up from the southwest towards the UK. So drawing up this very mild, very moist subtropical air, and then pretty much dumping it over those high ground areas across western parts of the UK. Now, over the next few days, what's going to happen with the jet? It's fairly active initially, but it starts to weaken a little bit. And notice by the end of the week, breaking apart, but lifting north of the UK. And that's going to allow high pressure then to build in more strongly across the UK, something we haven't seen for quite a long time. That's going to stick around actually for quite some time as well through late February and into early March. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes or so. But in terms of rainfall for the next couple of days or so between now and the end of Wednesday, so this is taking us up to Wednesday night at midnight, we're going to see another 100 or more millimetres of rain, particularly focused on Cumbria here, but a lot of rain still on those southern upslopes in southern Scotland and also parts of Snowdonia, for example, South Wales, also seeing some further heavy rain. Perhaps not quite so much in southwest England. The shift of focus is a little bit further north this time round, but clearly an orographic enhancement of the rainfall here. And again, not much at all on Tuesday and Wednesday in the southeast. And here again, it will be very mild. We could well see temperatures in the mid, perhaps locally high teens on Wednesday afternoon in the best of any brightness. So here's the overall pattern for Wednesday. You can see that front here sort of straddling the western side of the UK, just continuously piling that rain up onto those southern upslopes here. Quite windy too, a lot of isobars, but it's drawing in this very mild air up. So here we could see, again, despite the wind, temperatures getting to 16, 17 degrees in southeastern parts of the UK. Something a bit fresher trying to come in behind this weather front, and that process will continue through Wednesday night and into Thursday. So our weather front here, little wave running along it potentially at times, but gradually weakening as it tracks further southeast. But we will see some patchy rain at times into southeast England on Thursday. A bit of uncertainty about how active the front will be by the time it gets here. Probably not a great deal of rain for most, but we could just see these odd little ripples that run up along the front, as we saw on Monday, where you could just see that rainfall briefly pepping up for a time. Behind it, something fresher coming in, so temperatures will be a bit lower on Thursday, even in the southeast. Still pretty blustery in the north with some showers, and these could actually be a little bit wintry on some of the mountains in Scotland as well. And then it's all about what happens towards the end of the week. So we get rid of our weather front, we kill off a lot of these showers in the north, and high pressure then starts building more strongly. And we've been talking about this for a number of weeks now in the farming forecast, even back to sort of mid-January, that high pressure looked like it was going to build over or near the UK during the latter part of February, and that's exactly what's going to happen later on this week. Now, the position of the high will be key, and in this situation here, which is quite likely by the weekend, it's still far enough south to allow these weak weather fronts to come in off the Atlantic across Scotland. So it doesn't necessarily mean completely dry everywhere. There will be some subtle differences from place to place and day to day as this high shifts about a little bit. But at least initially across Scotland, we could well see a little bit of patchy rain through the weekend as these weak weather fronts come in. But for most, it should be fairly quiet weather later this week and into the weekend. Much lighter winds by this stage, so that means fog could well be quite slow to clear, especially later in the weekend and the beginning of next week. And also the potential for some frost to return as well. So this is just a snapshot of what could be the sort of temperatures we see first thing on Saturday morning. Again, don't take the exact numbers and locations literally, it will depend on exactly where the cloud is, but you can see the signal here that southern areas perhaps at risk of getting a bit of frost around. Further north though, where we get those weather fronts coming in, a bit more cloud, so perhaps not quite so cold here, at least initially. But for all of us, a slightly higher risk of getting a little bit of frost later this week and into the weekend as the high pressure builds in, but still pleasant enough in the sunshine with temperatures above average by day in the best of any sunshine and those lighter winds. Now this chart's looking a little bit complicated, so I'll talk you through it. Basically, this is looking at the what's going on in the middle part of the atmosphere. So often you'll see pressure charts on TV, that's what's happening at ground level at the surface, but actually a lot of the weather we receive at the ground depends on what's going on higher up. So this is about 3.5 miles or so above ground, looking at the sort of pattern here. Big ridge over the UK by the weekend, and so the jet stream gets diverted around that, around the top of the UK and then back down the other side. This is our upper high, if you like. It may well be located in a different place to the surface high that you often see on pressure charts. The reason I'm showing you this chart and animation is because we're trying to keep an eye on these little features higher up in the atmosphere. This is a little disturbance. Whenever you see these yellow and red shadings, that means there could be some slight enhancement of perhaps a few showers or some showery outbreaks of rain. So this is one example. There's another one down here just off the screen south of Spain and Portugal. And as I run this sequence through, it's just one model's idea, so don't take it too literally, but you can see these little things move about, they distort the shape of the upper high at times. And so these features could potentially bring the risk of a little bit of showery rain or a few showers in places in an otherwise high pressure dominated story. It's all about what's going on higher up in the atmosphere, really. That's crucial when high pressure's in charge. So broadly speaking, it's dry for quite a while, but there could be the odd day here and there where we get these sort of unexpected, if you like, showers cropping up, and we won't really know too much about them until nearer the time. And it's all tied into these sort of features that are going on higher up in the atmosphere. And the models are still fluctuating with exactly where these will be at this early stage. Now for the early part of next week, with the high pressure having built over the UK through the weekend, it is likely to shift east of the UK during the beginning of next week, but still close enough to keep us mostly dry. Now in this scenario, the high pressure's to the northeast of the UK, and so on the southern flank we've got more of an easterly breeze. This could potentially bring in some slightly colder air from the east, with that perhaps a few showers, but again the main emphasis is on mostly dry weather. It won't be in this situation as cold as we saw through the early part of February, so we're not expecting a significant cold spell, but it could potentially turn a bit colder with more cloud and a few showers if we get this easterly component building in. Now the more likely scenario is the high pressure will have shifted to the southeast of the UK early next week, so centred over Central Europe, still extending this ridge up across the UK, and instead the wind direction is more of a southeasterly coming out of the continent, which is a drier direction, should hopefully mean a bit more in the way of sunshine. But again, those features near Spain and Portugal I talked about, they could run up the western flank of this high and could produce a little bit of showery rain perhaps into the southwest and west of the UK during the beginning and middle part of next week. There's a bit of uncertainty about how far exactly west these features will be. Broadly speaking, high pressure's in charge. The wind direction is key as to where you're sourcing the air from. Even in this scenario, with an onshore wind along these east coasts, we could have areas of low cloud that get stuck underneath the high. And so I'm not promising it'll be sunny all the time, because we could well have some stubborn areas of fog and low cloud that are difficult to shift. But light winds through the weekend, as the high drifts a bit further away, we might get a bit more breeze around the edge of this area of high pressure, especially in Western Britain. But in this situation, actually, you can get a bit of Föhn effect on the western side. So the best of the sunshine and the best of the temperatures are most likely to be on the western side of the UK in this sort of situation. So to show that in a little bit more detail, we often show you these ensemble graphs, of course. Each of these grey lines is a different computer model. The red line here is the average of all of these. The black line is sort of average pressure for the time of the year, so it's about 1,012 millibars most of the year, really. And actually on here for reference, I put the record for the highest pressure recorded in the UK during the month of March. This was actually recorded last year, 1,051 millibars. So you can see none of these lines get up to that magnitude, so we're not expecting record-breakingly high high pressure. But, at times, especially this weekend, we're getting quite up there into the 1,040 millibar sort of range. So high pressure building quite clearly through this weekend. It's staying pretty high through most of next week. There's no real big shift. It comes down a little bit. That's just because the high pressure is moving a little bit further away into Europe, perhaps. Now, there is a trend for pressure to start falling later next week, through next weekend and into the beginning of the second week of March. Now, this fall happens quicker on some of these models than others. So there's some uncertainty about how long the high pressure lasts for. It looks like lasting until at least the end of the week, Friday the 5th here, for example, but an increasing risk through next weekend, but perhaps more especially the beginning of the following week, of things turning more unsettled from the west. So western areas most likely to see the rain first, and then perhaps eventually getting towards the east. So there's a big spread here, as you can see, as to how things will play out by the beginning of the following week. But I do think sort of Monday the 8th of March-ish, give or take a couple of days, is when things will start to perhaps break down from this rather settled pattern. Now, we've also showed you this before. This is the chance of getting a dry day. So if you want dry weather, ideally you're looking for these dark brown colours, and if you want rain, you're looking for the greener colours here. So clearly that signal there for quite a bit of wet weather for the next couple of days, especially in the north and west, still dry in the southeast of the UK. And then this big block in here as high pressure builds in to give us a lot of dry weather across many parts of the UK, with the caveat that we could see those odd showers cropping up if those upper level disturbances come in. But broadly speaking, a lot of dry weather around, and then there is this trend around the 8th, give or take a couple of days, for things to turn unsettled in the north and west initially, and then that may actually eventually extend further east across the UK later on in the week. And so things turning more unsettled perhaps for the middle part of March. So if you want to know what's going on where you are as we go through the next couple of weeks, by all means give our forecasters a ring. We're available every day from 6 in the morning through till 6 in the evening, including weekends, and we can give you the latest information on the wind conditions if you're trying to get some spraying done and that sort of thing as well. Now, beyond that, this is through 8th of March to the 14th, so this is when things start breaking down. Still that signal for higher than average pressure, because initially at the beginning of the week we'll still have high pressure close by, but I suspect this signal will weaken as we go through the week. So expect things to turn more unsettled across the UK. That high pressure does extend further south though, compared to average for the time of the year. So broadly speaking, it is near or drier than average across much of Europe. There is a little area of low pressure down here which might give some fairly wet weather to the eastern side of Spain perhaps, and just still fairly unsettled across northern parts of Scandinavia. Temperatures for many parts of Europe at or above average through the week 3 period as well, so the mild theme by day continues, but still the potential for chilly nights, of course, where we get light winds and clear skies. And then towards the middle part of March, 15th of March onwards, that high pressure having retreated a bit further to the southwest and allowing more of this sort of Atlantic influence to come in. So more of a west to northwesterly flow, we think, across the UK, and broadly speaking, lower than average pressure across a good part of Europe as well. It's still early stages, the signals are fairly weak at this stage, but it may actually turn a bit cooler in western parts of Europe, with near or perhaps even a touch below average temperature-wise during this time frame, with a fairly chilly northwesterly. That would bring increasing risk of rain, also an increasing risk of some snow on some of the Scottish mountains, for example, as well during this time frame. Above average rainfall in Scotland, you'll notice, near normal elsewhere, so we expect some rain during this time frame because the average in East Anglia, for example, is about 12 millimetres or so in a given week, and looking pretty unsettled actually across southern and eastern Europe during the middle part of March as well. So just to summarise, over the next couple of weeks or so, there will be some heavy rain in the west this week and some strong winds for many parts of the UK actually, but later on high pressure will build in and it will stay with us for a good 10 days or so by the looks of things, bringing mostly dry conditions but with a risk of frost and fog. And then it looks like towards the 8th of March, the second week of March onwards, it will start to turn unsettled, especially in the north, but perhaps also further south eventually later on in the second week of March. So at long last, some drier weather. I know many people are desperate for some dry weather to dry the ground out, and so it does look like we are going to see quite a bit of dry weather over the next 10 days or so. And you can keep up to date with the latest day-by-day forecast as ever by following us on social media.